Coordinates: 40 degrees north 127 degrees east, 40 degrees north 127 degrees east, 40. 127 North Korea and Tumen rivers, and to the south by South Korea, with the heavily fortified Korean demilitarized zone separating the two. North Korea, like its southern counterpart, claims to be the legitimate government of the entire peninsula and adjacent islands. Pyongyang is the country's capital and largest city. In 1910, Korea was annexed by Imperial Japan. At the Japanese surrender at the end of World War II in 1945, Korea was divided into two zones, with the north occupied by the Soviet Union and the south occupied by the United States. Negotiations on reunification failed, and in 1948, separate governments were formed: the Socialist Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the north, and the Capitalist Republic of Korea in the south. An invasion initiated by North Korea led to the Korean War. The Korean Armistice Agreement brought about a ceasefire, but no peace treaty was signed. According to Article 1 of the Constitution of North Korea, the DPRK is an independent socialist state. North Korea holds elections, though they have been described by independent observers as sham elections. North Korea is a totalitarian dictatorship, with an elaborate cult of personality around the Kim dynasty. The Workers' Party of Korea, led by a member of the ruling family, holds absolute power in the state and leads the Democratic Front for the Reunification of the Fatherland, of which all political officers are required to be members. According to Article 3 of the Constitution of the DPRK, Juche is the North Korean official ideology. The means of production are owned by the state through state-run enterprises and collectivized farms. Most services, such as healthcare, education, housing and food production, are subsidized or state-funded. From 1994 to 1998, North Korea suffered a famine that resulted in the deaths of between 240,000 and 420,000 people. And the population continues to suffer malnutrition. North Korea follows Songun, or military-first policy. It is the country with the highest number of military and paramilitary personnel, with a total of 9,495,000 active reserve and paramilitary personnel, or approximately 37% of its population. Its active duty army of 1.21 million is the fourth largest in the world, after China, the United States and India, consisting of 4.7% of its population. It possesses nuclear weapons, in addition to being a member of the United Nations since 1991. North Korea is also a member of the Non-Aligned Movement, G77, and the ASEAN Regional Forum. A 2014 UN inquiry into abuses of human rights in North Korea concluded that the gravity, scale and nature of these violations reveal a state that does not have any parallel in the contemporary world, with Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch holding similar views. The North Korean government denies these abuses. The name Korea derives from the name Goryeo. The name Goryeo itself was first used by the ancient kingdom of Goguryeo, which was one of the great powers in East Asia during its time, ruling most of the Korean peninsula, Manchuria, parts of the Russian Far East and parts of Inner Mongolia. Under Gwanggaeto the Great, the 10th century kingdom of Goryeo succeeded Goguryeo, and thus inherited its name. which was pronounced by visiting Persian merchants as Korea. The modern spelling of Korea first appeared in the late 17th century in the travel writings of the Dutch East India Company's Hendrik Hamel. After the division of the country into North and South Korea, the two sides used different terms to refer to Korea, Chosun or Joseon as its new legal name. In the wider world, because the government controls the northern part of the Korean peninsula, it is commonly called North Korea to distinguish it from South Korea, which is officially called the Republic of Korea in English. Both governments consider themselves to be the legitimate government of the whole of Korea. For this reason, the people do not consider themselves as North Koreans, but as Koreans in the same divided country, as their compatriots in the South, and foreign visitors are discouraged from using the former term. After the First Sino-Japanese War and the Russo-Japanese War, Korea was occupied by Japan from 1910 to 1945. Korean resistance groups known as Dongnipgun operated along the Sino-Korean border, fighting guerrilla warfare against Japanese forces. Some of them took part in Allied action in China and parts of Southeast Asia. One of the guerrilla leaders was the communist Kim Il-sung, who later became the first leader of North Korea. After the Japanese surrender at the end of World War II in 1945, the Korean peninsula was divided into two zones along the 38th parallel, with the northern half of the peninsula occupied by the Soviet Union and the southern half by the United States. Negotiations on reunification failed. Soviet General Terentий Stoichkov recommended the establishment of the Soviet Civil Authority,